we've had some requests to try to do some things beyond just the TL classes. And so we're trying to honor those requests. So thank you for being with us tonight. Well, Jamie, as you said, I've been on a busy schedule, and a lot of the people that you've told me are signed on tonight know about some of that schedule because I've been in their cities recently. If you turn the clock back a couple of months, I've been really from Trinidad to South Africa, from there to Cincinnati, down to Texas, over to Alabama, to Sarasota, Florida, from there to Tampa. It's interesting to speak at the Fellowship of Companies for Christ International in Sarasota, and then go from there to Tampa, straight out to Las Vegas, kind of a two opposite ends of the spectrum. I spoke at the Human Resource Conference out there, and then, believe it or not, back to Trinidad, and from there to Phoenix, back to Texas, to Columbus, and then Cincinnati, over to Norfolk, Virginia, out to Portland, back to Trinidad again, today back in Texas, and in the last couple of days, a short stint in the hospital in Trinidad.
Wow.
I think I probably wore myself down just a little bit and had some stomach flu, but I'm back and at it again. So,
wow. So the hospital in Trinidad, did they give you Jell-O?
Actually, I didn't eat anything there. That's the last thing I was thinking about, was eating anything at all when I was there.
Okay, well, that's probably a good choice. Well, let's get right into it. You know, we ask everybody to think if they could walk away from tonight's webinar and they can say, you know what, I got it. I got that one thing that I really wanted Ford to talk about. What would that be? And had some great questions. And we're going to do our best, everybody, to get through all the questions. We're going to absolutely try to get through everything that we can. But we may not. So if we don't, please don't be offended, and we'll try to get to it next time. And some of the questions, by the way, I'm going to be responding to outside of the webinar. Some of them are a little more specific towards the way our model works and everything, and I'll be getting a hold of you on that. But so Ford, question number one, and this comes all the way from Africa. And Naomi asks, how do you start thinking beyond the bubble? And please share some practical everyday tools. So how do you start thinking beyond the bubble, and give us some practical tools?
Okay, well, that's a great question. It is one of the more complicated concepts that we teach. And when this light bulb comes on, it does help. But remember, we start off by saying that we don't believe thinking outside the box works. And the reason is because we go somewhere, we get motivated, and then it gets uncomfortable and we crawl back in the box. So the first step to thinking beyond the bubble is to change our thought while we're still in the box. And that first thought that we have to change too, we have to build up the muscle that when we want to go through change, it's going to get uncomfortable. And if we don't make the decision before we leave the box that when it gets uncomfortable, we're not going to crawl back in, it's very, very difficult to stay out of that box, not to go back to where the pressure pushes us back to. And so the key to thinking beyond the bubble is to make a decision on what are the areas in my life that if I had a change in those areas, it would make me a better father. It would make me a better boss. It would make me a better husband or spouse or pastor or CEO or taxi driver or dishwasher or stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, a better friend. So what is an area that it would help me be a better leader in any sphere in which I work? And if that area is around anger, then we have to change our thought from the things that cause us to get angry. We have to know what it is we're thinking when that event takes place. And so when the event takes place, we have a thought. That thought causes us to feel, and that feel causes us to act or behave. And if we keep keeping that same old thought, we're going to keep the feeling. And if we keep the feeling, we're going to keep the behavior. And so you have to write down, what are those thoughts that are keeping me bound? And then you got to write down, what are the new thoughts that I want to have that would unbind me to be a better leader in that sphere of influence? And just literally, it's like lifting weights. You have to practice the new thoughts. That you have to build that muscle up. And when we build up the muscle of the new thought, then we atrophied the muscle of the old thought. And this takes a while, just like building muscles in our arms or our legs or our shoulders. It's not like it's done one time and the new thought replaces the old one. Now that is possible, but more than likely it's going to take a little bit of practice. So write down the new thought, replace the old one with the new one, Start thinking about the new one or new ones more often. You'll get beyond the old thinking box. And remember, beyond the box means it's just as uncomfortable to crawl back as it is to move forward. Then you'll that old way of thinking. When that new way of thinking comes, that's how you know that you've gotten to thinking in the bubble, beyond the bubble. It's when the old way goes away and the new one takes over.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ford. That was incredible. Um, this next question comes from Nate in Northern Kentucky, and that's a little bit of a distance from Africa, but that's great. So, from Nate from Northern Kentucky, how do you craft a healthy and productive day and week?
Okay, that's a great question. Jamie, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to the other question just for a minute because they did ask for an example.
Yes,
And
they did.
I forgot to give you one. One example is, if somebody wants to lose weight, the best thing they can do is stop thinking about the fried food and the sweets and the desserts that they're going to eat and start thinking about eating fruits and vegetables. Now, as simple as that may sound, it's not easy, but that is a way to change the way you think, to change the way you eat. If you change the way you eat, weight probably comes off. The example that people who've been to our sessions have heard me talk about is being a person that treated my wife inappropriately. I would make her think everything was her fault. And so I had to change my way of thinking because I really thought most of it was her fault. And that's passive aggressive behavior. And anyone who's thinking and blaming other people for everything, and I blamed her for pretty much everything. Well, I had to change my thought and take responsibility for the thoughts I had and not blame her. And once I started changing that, I started moving beyond the box. And then one day she gave me a hug and said, "You're not the same man you used to be," because my way of thinking had changed completely. Therefore, my behavior towards her changed completely.
That's awesome. Thank you for great giving that example. Got lots of comments. Or John, thank you, John. John says, "Great example, Ford." That's John Ramstead there. So thank you.
Well, if anybody would understand that, I think it'd probably be John. Just kidding there. Joking with you.
John, you can get him back for that later. Okay,
Really.
so back to Nate's question. How do you craft a healthy and productive day and or week?
Well, Nate, one of the things that we really encourage people to do is to take the time to write that BP MOSA, that vision, purpose, mission, objectives, strategies, and action plan. And one of the things that I think we hear the most, and sometimes this comes from people who've been to our training 2, 3, 4, or 5 times, they'll say, "Why didn't I just do that the first time I came to the training? Because that was life-changing." And the reason is once where you're headed, if you really do know what you want your tombstone to say, if you know what you want your friends and family and coworkers to say about you at your funeral, it really does set the pattern for your life. And when you do that with a vision, with a purpose, and you have certain objectives that you want to reach, goals, if you will, on an annual basis, it actually determines what are your action plans for that week. And the other thing is sometimes, while it's very difficult for many of us, sometimes we just have to learn to say no. And if we're highly relational, that can be difficult to tell people no. And so if you're a highly relational person, you may have to spend more time putting transactional things, activities that need to happen, things that need to get done. We may have to be more intentional about putting those on our calendars. If we're highly transactional people, that stuff's getting done. So we may have to be more intentional about putting relationships on our calendar. But again, part of that is just learning to say no because we're all extremely busy and we can't all get to everything, at least most of us, that we're asked to do. But if you know what your priorities are, for me, it's very simple. In this world, my priorities are my wife and my 3 children. They come first. People have seen me in other countries, even when I got a text from my wife, letting me know that her mom was in the hospital. I immediately told them that I needed to catch the next flight home. And before I even had a chance, Sandra had responded, no, we got this taken care of. If I need you, I will call you. But to know that, it's just an easy decision for me. one of the things that I've written down is that I won't miss any significant events in my daughter's lives. And so if somebody wants me to come somewhere and there's a significant event going on in my daughter's lives, it's easy for me to make the decision that they come first. But without that VP MOSA, some of those decisions would not be as easy. I really encourage you to, if you haven't done that, I really encourage you to take a few hours and do that. It makes a huge difference.
That's really great. And it leads me to, honestly, the next question. And this comes from Sean Kissy up in Cincinnati, which is actually close to our good friend Nate that asked that last question. But Sean asked, what does a finished VP MOSA look like?
Well, I'm not sure it ever gets finished, Sean. You get one done, but it's smart to evaluate it every 12 to 18 as it matures, maybe every 24 months. But if you look at the action plan that we send out, it actually is just fill out the paperwork. And when you fill that paperwork out, you could say the first one is finished because it does have what's on your tombstone. It does have what you would have people say about you at your funeral or in the newspaper if you passed away. It does have a list of values you'd have to live by. There is a vision you're trying to reach. There's a purpose of why. And there's a list of things, or at least one or two things that you might be willing to do that other people may not be willing to do to hit that vision. And from there, and everyone's is different. You might have 2 or 3 goals a year. You might have 5 or 6. The way I write mine is around what I call the big rocks in my life, the big areas. So I have goals or objectives around my family, and within that, around Sandra and my 3 daughters. I have goals around our FSH strategy group. I have goals around transformational leadership, goals around, for example, a book that I've had the goal to finish for the last couple of years, and hopefully get it done in the next few months. And that's why we call them objectives, because things around us change. And TL on Demand that we came out with this year was actually more important, I believe, than finishing that book. And so while there was a goal to finish it, or an objective to finish it with some strategies and actions to do it, when something else came that we thought took priority over that, it was easy to shift and say, and not feel bad about not reaching it because it really was an objective because something else took priority. But when you have those big rocks, I also facilitate or lead a group of business people in America around something called Love 2020, trying to reach 156 million business people by the end of 2020 with this message of caring about other people. And so I've got goals and objectives around that. And so whatever they are, write the objectives, strategies, and actions around each one of those major areas of your life. And I think you'll be surprised how much more manageable those things get.
That's great. Thank you, Ford, for that. And I think that okay, Ford, Aaron asked a question here, and I'm not sure what Aaron's last name is, but Aaron asked if we can briefly explain what we mean by VP MOSA for those who may not be familiar with it, or what the acronym means in transformational leadership.
Very good. VP MOSA stands for vision, purpose, mission, objectives, strategies, and action plan. And so for every objective, you may have 2 or 3 strategies or 2 or 3 actions for each objective to reach that objective / goal over the next 12 or 18 months. And so for every objective, you might have 1 or 2 strategies, maybe 3, depending on what you need, and then 2 or 3 action steps, maybe even 4, depending on what it is. When I first did mine, one of my objectives was that Sandra, later in life, when she reached the end, that she would say that there was no wife on earth loved more than she was. Now, when I wrote that down, I had a lot of work to do. I mean, there was a big stretch between where I was and making that happen. So some of the strategies and action plans were to go to a couple of marriage retreats, read some books to help me understand better on how a woman thinks compared to how a man thinks, learn more about what would make her feel secure as opposed to my needs, learn how to speak her love languages, which took me a long time on one of them, not quite as long on the other. But those were strategies and actions that I had to move toward to fulfill that objective, to see the vision that I wanted to fulfill in my life finished, to see that if I died, would she say that at my funeral? And that's just one example.
So I've got to know, are you discouraged having met Lauren? Because there's no way there's a wife more loved than my wife.
Well, I think what I said is that there wouldn't be one any more love, because knowing you and a bunch of people on this call and how hard you are also pursuing that, I really hope we're all in this together, and that a lot of us can be at our funerals one day, and our wives and our husbands would make that comments about us. And that is one of the goals of transformational leaders, is that is how people would talk about us at the end.
That's awesome. Thank you. So this next question, we're going to move from VP Mosa a little bit, and this one's going to be a little interesting. I'm really excited to hear your response to this. And for our friends that aren't in the U.S. And are having the joy of watching our election cycle right now, you probably don't quite understand the emotion that we all go through here, watching what many people are calling a carnival. But it's serious stuff. And Carla, one of my dear friends here in Nashville, Carla asked two questions, and they're along the same lines. Question number one is, what is the biggest challenge facing the potential of transformational leadership in U.S. businesses? And then what impact do you anticipate the upcoming election will have on opportunities for growth of transformational leadership in the U.S.? So let's start with number one, and if you need me to repeat number 240, just let me know. So question number one, what is the biggest challenge facing the potential of transformational leadership in U.S. businesses?
Well, Carla, I guess the way I would put it is, as a lot of people in this webinar know, a lot of what we do in TL are based on principles that are in the Bible, in the Torah, the Old Testament, and the New Testament. And when a lot of people talk about pushing a Christian agenda, they're really, what they mean is a right-wing, more what I would call white Republican agenda. And that agenda is really what Christians are against. It's so much about judgmentalism and what we're against, and that isn't what TL is all about. And so I'm concerned that one day a business might say that you're pushing a Christian agenda just because a lot of the principles are in the Bible. Now, a lot of businesses who are don't necessarily even believe in Christianity, use a lot of the biblical principles that make them very successful. But if they made the comment that we're pushing a Christian agenda, that could be a challenge. But what we're pushing is not the Christian agenda that most people talk about when they use that word. We're talking about caring for one another. We're talking about forgiving one another. We're talking about doing things for other people who may not look like us, who may not sound like us, may not be our color of skin. And so, we're talking about laying down our own needs for something greater. And so, it could be a challenge if businesses thought we were coming in to, quote, push a Christian agenda, unquote, when that terminology itself is not even, in my opinion, the Christian agenda is not even, when that's used that way, what it stands for, in my opinion, is not necessarily even Christian. And so that could be a challenge to us. And that's why when we do go into businesses, we leave that language out unless they ask for it. And so that could be a challenge to us. And we know that. And we're trying to do the right things to get these tools into places who may not believe that the place where it came from is accurate, but we can still tell them that even if they don't believe it, the principles still work.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And the next part of her question is, this is where I was going with the election. What impact do you anticipate the upcoming election will have on opportunities for growth of transformational leadership or similar type trainings in the U.S.?
Well, Carla, it's interesting. Jamie set up a call with me and a young man a few weeks ago. And at the end of the call, we got an email from him a few days later, and we're considering this actually. And the more support we have from other people, the more we'll consider doing it, and I'm pretty sure we're going to do it. But his question was, what kind of impact could TL have on this nation or in cities? And we shared a few things with him, and then I shared with him, did he believe I asked him a question, do you believe we have a leadership crisis in America? And he said yes. And I asked him what he thought it was. And then he asked me, he said, I'm the television guy. I want to know what you think it is. And to me, our leadership crisis in America is not just at a governmental level, it's at a CEO level, it's at a parental level, it's at a church level, but it's the same crisis. And it's that we care more about how we look to other people. We care more about defending our behavior, even to the point of lying, than we do about the people that follow us. And so the more we head that direction, as sad as it sounds, the more open doors we have for TL. Because people, when they hear that, go, wow, that's exactly where our crisis is centered. And what TL tries to do is to deal with that head on and get leaders to be transparent, to be vulnerable, to lay their lives down, to care more about the people that follow them than they do even about themselves. And so I think that, think of the logic in this, that there's two political parties and they fight each other the whole time. And then in one moment in time, they say, now let's come work together. I mean, that's just not even a logical concept. It just doesn't even make sense from the get-go. So at some point, there's going to have to be leaders that will stand up across our nation, across our cities, across the church system, the synagogues, the mosque, the business, the arts, entertainment, media, all those spheres are going to have to stand up and say, you know what, the people that follow us are more important than how we look. We don't have to lie. We don't have to cover up our stuff. It's more important that we take care of the people around us. And so I think it actually opens more doors for TL. I don't think it closes doors.
Yeah, and Ford, I got two follow-up questions for this that I want to ask. One of them is from Patrick McBain, and he says, with everything you just said being said, why do you think it's so difficult for us to be vulnerable and transparent?
Well, it can be humiliating, to be honest. I mean, when we talk about the mistakes we've made, when we talk about it's all built, in my opinion, on fear, guilt, and shame. And what happens is over time, we have a self-identity that's formed around us, and we want to look good to people. In other words, it's important that they like us, that they respect us, that they love us. And we think if we, put on our fancy mask and our big smile, no matter how much we're dying on the inside, that will take place. And I think it's really hard, again, to lay down your own agenda of not looking good. Jamie, as you know, I speak from personal experience. I mean, I was that guy. I was the guy that was the top of the trade journals, that was called the golden boy by different people, the golden couple. And I was hurting so bad on the inside, I was ready to kill myself. That I cheated on Sandra. And so I'm not judging those people. All I'm saying is that at that point, I obviously cared more about me than I did my children, my wife, those that followed me. I mean, I put our business at risk. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I did with my private life that definitely over time affected my public life. And so I'm not judging those people. I'm just saying that I do believe that's our leadership crisis.
Yeah. Now, this question is going to put you on the spot, Ford, and I love to put you on the spot, Ford.
Yes, you do.
All you got to do sometime is go to a live training where Patrick and I are there with Ford, and you will see Ford get abused. It's wonderful. No, so Carla asked a follow-up question to her questions, and I've got to ask this.
Okay.
What three major things would Ford do if he were elected president?
Oh, that's funny, Jamie. Carla, thanks for the question. Next question. The things that I would focus on, Carla, is I would focus on, not gossiping about the other party, not gossiping about people within my party. Even though it would be very difficult for a person like that to ever get elected, because all that crud sells news. But I would focus on getting people to work together. And as they came together to work together, I probably would take them through TL. If I were president, I'd probably say, hey guys, we're going to go through some of this stuff together. We're going to start putting our constituents first. We're going to put America before our individual needs. And when we start doing that, we can fix America. And that's what I would tell them. And the third thing is I would say to Christians that this is a democracy, and the people have the right to make the choice on some things that it's not our right to make. While I have certain beliefs around those things, personally, it's not my decision. And I would tell America, a democracy, you don't have the right to tell Christians or the church, what they can or can't do. You can't tell them, that they have to do, same-sex marriages. At the same time, I would say to the Congress that that's the people's decision. I don't think it's the Supreme Court's decision to make constitutional decisions. I think it's the people's decision. And that's the three things I would work on, is try to get people the right back to making the decision to the people, not the Supreme Court. I try to get the leaders to work together, and then within that, I would try to get them to do the things that are the best for the people of America, not for themselves.
I can see it now. Taylor McBain, 2020.
I would struggle with that one.
Okay, let's see. We probably think of a better running mate than Patty, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, and that's a great question. And kind of in the same line here, since we're kind of talking about how to motivate and what would the right thing be, right way to handle ourselves in the country, let's take it down kind of on a micro level here. Tony from Taylor Mill, Kentucky asked how a great leader can motivate volunteers in a nonprofit. And I think that this could probably, and you can take this forward and tell me if I'm wrong, this would probably slide over into a business as well. But I'm just curious, how can a great leader motivate volunteers in a nonprofit?
Yeah, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to answer one more question for Carla too, Carla, because within those three things, if you've been to our TL and played our change game, which you have, there are plenty of resources in America to do all the things we need to do, but they're not going to happen with the government doing it on their own, the church doing it on their own, the business leaders doing it on their own. A really good leader would be able to pull all those groups together to solve the problems in America. They wouldn't be battling one another. So I'll just share that within those three things, that would be the outcome, is to pull those different sectors, those different leaders, the leaders that have influence in those different spheres, to come together to fix the things that are broken. Because we are, as much as I may not like the way Donald Trump says some things, or Hillary Clinton says some things, we got some things that are broken, and they're going to be near impossible to fix if the government tries to do them on their own, or if any one of those spheres tries to do it on their own. Okay, so give me that next question again, Jamie. I kind of stayed in that other box for a minute there. So
yeah, no problem.
I am still a man.
Yeah, yep. You're waffling on me. Yeah. Okay. How can a great leader motivate volunteers in a nonprofit?
That's a really good question. I've done quite a bit of that, and led nonprofits that had 0 paid staff, and people have been amazed, what they've accomplished. Number one, there has to be an inspiring vision. In other words, there has to be something that inspires the people around the vision to want to put their energy and effort into it. And if there's not a vision that inspires people and to go after the same thing, that's near impossible to motivate volunteers. Number two, they have to believe it's achievable. So a vision that they don't believe is achievable is very hard to work towards. And then number three, I'll say this over and over again, smart people like doing business with smart people. And a lot of volunteer efforts are very loosely run. They let a lot of people that, as you know, we call them lean outers, the people that they'll hang grenades in the middle of the room because they're volunteers. They let them get away with things that it just doesn't make sense to let them get away with. And they end up hurting the vision. They end up hurting the organization. And so they got to be able to cast the vision. It's got to be achievable. And you got to be able to hold your volunteers accountable on how they treat each other and achieving the vision, just like you do a paid staff. And so that's not much different than a business. If good leadership has a vision that people want to follow, and they lead through casting vision, serving, teaching, training, equipping, empowering, letting go, not command control, without a lot of energy and emotion in it. Same with a nonprofit, and they hold people accountable to fulfill the vision. People will follow them. If not, it's hard for people to continue to follow leaders that are not inspiring, or not believable, or not holding themselves accountable, or holding other people accountable.
That's good. Thank you. Well, kind of in that same vein then, Gary from Orlando asks, what is your best advice regarding hiring new employees?
Well, the best thing to do about hiring new employees is, number one, as you're going through the interview process, ask the right questions. We teach this Waddle model about doing a welcome, ask questions, discuss what you came to discuss. But number one is ask the right questions. Find out what you really want to know about them. That's legal. I mean, you can ask them their age and their religious preferences and those things, but you can ask the right questions to find out, are they lined up with your vision? And a lot of people in interviews, they don't ask visionary questions. They don't really know where the people, when they come to work, are they bought into what the organization is doing? So ask the right questions. Number two, be sure that they're clear on what the policies and procedures are when they come in. How do we handle conflict? How do we do discipline? Be sure they're clear on that, and be consistent. Number three, I believe in most organizations, it's worth the time, energy, and effort to do a personality profile to find out, who people really are before they get there. Now, I don't believe in making decisions based on those at all, but I believe they're just one component of it. And last, I would say almost anybody can fool people for 3 months. And so I would probably hire all people with a 90-day probationary period, knowing that at any point during that time, if they were not performing or behaving well, they could be dismissed, because people can fool you pretty easily for 90 days.
Thank you, Ford. That 90-day thing could save a lot of heartache, I imagine. This is a question that came from the Philippines, and I wanted to ask you because we get asked this question a lot, and I'm hoping you can answer this in like 2 sentences, because this is the way that we need this question answered, and you'll understand when I ask it. This is from Ernalyn, and I hope I'm saying that right, from the Philippines, and she says, greetings from Manila, Ford. I'm trying to get many people to attend the TL Manila and TL Cebu, and some people would ask me how that is different from other trainings. Why would I attend? What's a short answer that Ernalyn can give to these folks that are saying, why is TL any different than anything else I've ever been to?
Well, Ernalyn, number one, you have to bring me back instead of Patrick McBain. That's pretty simple.
All right,
Now,
questions answered. Moving on.
Ernalyn, hey, it's great to hear from you. And you know how good Patty is. You love having him there, and I love working with him. And he's a rock star, as you know. I feel that way. Ernalyn, it's pretty simple. Most leadership trainings, in my opinion, my past, my history, have not actually given tools, ingredients, behaviors, and a recipe on how to lead, where to lead, when to lead, and well, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. So we hear what leadership is, but we don't hear about the how, the who, the when, and the where. And TL gives the tools on the how, the who, the when, and the where, and that clearly is the difference.
Awesome. I'm going to be playing this recording back as many times as it takes for me to write that down, because that was
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Especially the part I bumbled there. I know you enjoyed that part.
Oh, I'll edit it out. Don't worry. You're right. Okay. So this next question comes from Sally Shields in Cincinnati, and this is a really good one. This is something as a consultant I've struggled with many times with companies that have virtual teams. And we know that technology's gotten to where we can do what we're doing right now. We can see each other's faces and we can hear people talk and we can ask questions on the fly, but it still does not, nothing replaces face-to-face, hand-to-hand touch, smell, feel, direct communication. I think we would all agree on that. So she asked this question: how can you develop and deepen relationships that are necessary for moving into a stage 4 or stage 5 organization when the leadership and the team members are all in different states and rarely see each other in person?
Well, Sally, that's a great question. And that may be the most difficult team to build a stage 5 team. And I can tell you, even bankers know this about us. We teach lots of tools, lots of ingredients, lots of behaviors. But I think the 3 things that we teach the most, and I'm not saying I'm always perfect at them, but I think if teams learn these 3 things, if they don't get anything else out of TL, if they learn these 3 things, you can lead any organization, anywhere, anyway. And that's unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness, and humility. And if people can lay down their right to be right, and they can walk in love and forgiveness and see who people are becoming, not who they've been or even who they are, and that's forgiveness, a stage 5 team can be built just about on any platform. Now, that's my opinion.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. So this question comes, and I'm going to butcher the name, so please forgive me. That this comes from, I think it's Naya Lamille from Africa. And she actually says, I would love to hear more on how to fill my serotonin tank.
Okay. Well, Naya, or Nia, whichever you are, since I'm not looking at it, I'm going by Jamie. That sometimes is easier than other times, and sometimes it's very difficult. So if your serotonin is actually low, the way you get it back is you got to get your adrenaline system in check. If your adrenaline is running all the time, and it was just go, 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 it's very difficult for your serotonin to balance itself. If your adrenaline is off and on, in other words, you get a shot that gives you energy, and then you're drained, and then you get a shot, and then you're drained, there's a good chance that that's happening at night as well as during the day. And if it's happening at night, it's very difficult to sleep. And lots of times our serotonin is rebuilt. It's probably not a good way of saying it, but it's replenished, it's restored when we're sleeping. So the 3 best ways to restore your serotonin is to get your adrenaline system in check. How do you do that? Get some exercise even when you don't feel like it, even if it's just a 10 or 15-minute walk during the day. Get some sleep the best you can. If you have to take some melatonin to stay asleep, the natural stuff, not the drug stuff, because that just affects the adrenaline even more, but where you can stay asleep. Eating healthy, those 3 things in combination are huge on getting your serotonin back in place. And another thing is do that gas tank emptier and filler T-chart that we fill out and that we ask you to fill out. And those places, those things, places, people, activities, foods that empty your tank, start stopping those. I mean, just start the process of removing those from your life. And I hate to say this, but even if it's people, if they're emptying your tank and they're destroying your serotonin and your dopamine, and they got your adrenaline system where you're always anxious and anxiety, just tell them you got to pull away for a while until you can get yourself back to where you need to be. Don't blame them. Take it on yourself. This is something I need to do. But without doing those 3 or 4 things, the last thing is sometimes this is directly related to how the liver is functioning. And so if you're really struggling with your adrenaline and your serotonin, you might have a doctor, a naturopath, a chiropractor, somebody to test your liver and see if it's functioning appropriately. Because if it's not, some dietary liver cleansing may be what's in order. And I'm not a doctor. I'm mainly speaking from personal experience.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you. That serotonin tank's important, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right. So this next question comes from one of my favorite dudes in Cincinnati, Mr. Rob Steese. And Rob, I see you're on here, and I just would like to remind you of our lovely time sitting on the couch together. There's a funny picture about that. But anyway, that was one angry couch. There were some big boys on that couch. So Rob's not one of those big boys. So Rob asked this question, and this is a tough one for it. So I want to see how you handle this. This is a really good one. He says, if there is one main idea in the TL material that is central to and ties in all or most of the other components, an idea that, if remembered, has the potential of organizing and remembering the totality of the TL material, what would that one idea be?
Humility.
All right. That's an answer to the question.
Rob, you know, we've been friends for a long time, and I truly believe that when we learn to lay our life down for other people, which takes humility, I mean, that when we do that, our team comes around us more. They give us all their ideas. They don't hold anything back. It means we're being transparent, vulnerable with them, which opens the door for them to be transparent and vulnerable. And then that lets them open up. It keeps them from holding back their ideas, thinking that we're going to think they're stupid, that we're going to judge them. And so in essence, I think all of it focuses right through that one word, because it just opens the door for the team to work together in a much more loving and vulnerable spot.
Thank you, Ford. It's a great question. Great answer.
Rob always has the best question. I'm telling you, the best questions on the planet come from that man. I think I've learned more in the last, 10 years, whatever, how long I've known him, getting his questions, and just about anything I've learned from him. So
that's great. Awesome. All right. This next question comes from Dan in Cincinnati. This says, I would like to hear Ford talk about taking an organization from a command control structure to one built on relationships, an organization that works as a team without the drama often found in most organizations, like gossip and one-upping and control and those kind of things.
Well, Dan, that really comes down to the leader of the organization. If the leader of an organization or leaders of an organization have a lot of that, have a lot of emotion or drama, it is very difficult for the organization to come together in a unity that drives forward. They can walk on eggshells. They can worry about what that command control person might do. That because of the command control attitude, it makes the rest of the team not want to jump on board and move forward. And for anybody who's watched TL on Demand, you've seen the little video where we talk about the person that's command control and then very submissive or passive aggressive, and they go back and forth. And of course, we call that schizophrenic leadership. And those people are even more difficult to follow because you never know which one you're going to get on any given day. So, Dan, great question. And again, the only way to move past that, again, is to lay our lives down for those that follow us and allow them to give feedback first. As leaders, we talk last. I was actually on the phone today with this national group that I've been asked to lead, and we were on the phone for about an hour, and I had them on mute, and my wife was looking at me, and she's like, "Are you going to say anything?" And I looked at her, I said, "Man, this is great. They're coming up with all the best ideas in the world, and at the end, they're going to ask me what I think, and I'm going to look like the smartest guy in the room because I'm already going to have all their ideas, and I'm just going to probably add one thing to it, and and look brilliant because they've already come up with it all." And that's what good leaders do, is they listen to their team and then, encourage movement forward from that. So that's how we break through that command control.
That's awesome. Thank you. Randy from Cincinnati wants to know, he's recently gone through the TL training, and He says he's really benefited, obviously, from it, as we all have. And he wants to know what the pieces are that create the most influence towards those that you support and manage. He wants to know basically what are the tools that are the most valuable to him with the people that he supports and manages.
A big question. I think one of the most important tools that you can put in place in your organization is that thing that we call the social covenant. How are we going to treat each other? And if we break it, how are we going to deal with it and walk it out that way? Within that tool, how we go to one another is so important. Going in love and forgiveness and humility and truth. And then if we're wrong, being able to actually do all 6 steps. I've seen people say, consider yourself 6-stepped. That's not the 6-step apology.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. A second one is using the Waddle model. I mean, that really builds the team, because when you walk in, do some affirmations, welcome the team in, ask questions, find out what their needs are before you as the leader give your needs. Those 2 things are 2 of the biggest tools. And then the third one I would say, since you asked, I think you said the top 3, is have a clear vision that everybody's in agreement with. And if you can do those 3 through the V-Still model, so in other words, if you've got a clear vision, you know how you're going to resolve conflict, and you do it through that V-Still model where you really are teaching, training, and equipping so people can do their part of the vision, those handful of tools, add in the discipline model, those 4 or 5 tools will get you a long way down the road.
Awesome. And Randy also said he would like to hear a refresher of all the TL principles. Unfortunately, we don't have time probably on this webinar to do that. We may do that in a future webinar, just kind of do a blow through of some of the top principles. But I do want to let everybody know before we finish, we'll be finishing in about 10 minutes. We're going to be sharing a little bit more about TL On Demand and how you can get a massive discount on that if you're interested. And TL On Demand is where you can go and watch every training as many times as you want on demand. So we'll talk about that, Randy, when we talk about TL On Demand. We got another question from our friends in South Africa. I got to say this. There is a live question here from an anonymous viewer. How you even do that, I don't know. That says, Mr. Taylor has an amazing head of hair. That's awesome. Yeah, he bought that last week. Okay. So
that's funny.
So this is from our friend Andre in South Africa. And Andre says, many business owners are currently struggling financially due to the economy. How can the TL tools, or how can the TL be used as a tool to assist them in this challenge?
Well, when it comes to straight up financial questions, there's so much teaching we could do around that, but we don't in the training we do just because of the lack of time. But I would tell you, just to the person asking the question, if there is a financial struggle, lots of times it's based on how much we spend, not as much on how much we make. Having said that, I would also acknowledge that in America right now, and even in South Africa, there are not only a lot of unemployment, there's a lot of underemployment. And underemployment, as most of you know, is people who are way more qualified for a job than the one they have, which means they're well underpaid what they would be paid in the job that they're qualified for. And that happens in a down economic time. And when you have all the stuff coming out, all the data coming out from the government that says that everything's fine, that the unemployment rate's low. Well, when you throw the underemployment rate in with the unemployment, it's tough right now. And so for now, and I don't necessarily encourage this, but sometimes, I had to do, when I first got out of college, I worked a full-time job and, believe it or not, taught dance class at night. But I had to do, 2 things to keep things going. And sometimes we have to do that. And not that I want to see anybody have to do that. The better way is to try to get a balanced budget. And one of the things that, one of the people I highly recommend listening to is a man named Dave Ramsey. You can Google him. He has lots of good tools on helping with that.
Okay. And the same Andre asked a little more detailed question that I think would be a pretty interesting one for everybody to hear. Andre again is in South Africa, and he's in a town called Bloemfontein. Bloemfontein.
Bloemfontein.
Bloemfontein. And he said that a business owner there recently found out that one of her employees is involved in witchcraft, and is having a very negative impact on the business. This employee is usually actually a very nice person. However, there is enough performance issues to let her go and get rid of the problem. Is this, however, the way a TL business owner should handle the problem, or should she or he assist the person if they're a Christian? Should they assist them with salvation and deliverance? And I think this question could be asked in terms of the lean inners and the lean outers too, Ford. And but however you think you should handle it, this is a really interesting question. I'm interested to hear how you're going to handle this one.
Yeah, to me, the for this particular question, the witchcraft for me is really not something that comes into play if they are underperforming or poor relationships, which means either they're the wrong person or they're in the wrong seat. So that means they're either a lean outer or barely a lean inner. And I just go straight to the discipline model. That model is that three-step model that we use based on the people I've talked to in South Africa. It's legal there just like it is in America. I would advise that owner to go straight to it. I'd ask those questions, get the employee to admit that either they're not performing to the level they're supposed to, or they're behaving in a way they're not supposed to. And I would give them a certain amount of time to get it fixed. I'd meet with them again. If it's not fixed, I'd give them another amount of time. And if it's not fixed then, I would let them go be a problem somewhere else. It's just a real simple formula for me.
Okay, thank you.
And if you are a Christian and you do want to use your term, to lead them to Christ, that may happen in the process. Sometimes, like we talked about, change seldom occurs until the pain is staying the same exceeds the pain of change. So sometimes that pain can get people to turn around from their behavior and go a different direction.
Awesome. All right, we've got one more question, or time for one more question. We've got a few others, and I'm sorry we just can't get to them all tonight, guys. But I did want to ask this last question because it's going back to the VP MOSA, and it's one of our live questions here from Ernalyn again. And she says, or she or he, I'm sorry, says, I'm struggling. I'm struggling to she or he. I'm gonna stick with that.
Okay.
I'm struggling to finish and be satisfied with my VP MOSA. What would your advice be to me? I have a feeling that I'm doing it wrong. Is there a wrong way to do your VP MOSA, Ford?
Okay. Well, number one, Ernalyn, I'm not sure what part you're struggling with. So if you want to type that in real quick, I'll be sure I answer the part you're struggling with. But, I say do it in three sections. Do your tombstone, your epitaph, what you want people to say about you at your funeral or in the paper when you die, and your values. Do those three first. Look at them. From that, do a vision, a purpose, and a mission. Do that. Don't get bound up in the semantics. Okay? A lot of people get bogged down because they'll look back at their VPM, vision, purpose, mission, and they'll start questioning the vision. Is that really the purpose or is that the mission? Don't worry about that. Just answer those 2 or 3 questions, write it on a piece of paper. Now you've done the first 2 sections. Now do the third section. What are the goals or the objectives that you would do over the next 12 to 18 months to move you toward that vision? Do 3, 4, 5, or 6. Then do the strategies and actions. And again, don't get bound up, Ernalyn, in is it an objective, a strategy, or an action? Because that's where a lot of people get slowed down. And I'm saying don't worry about that. Just go do the actions you put in place, make them measurable, put some times on them, and move forward and do them. And I think you'll find that if you'll not get bound up in the semantics of what the 6 words, the VPM or the objectives, strategies, and actions mean, I think it'll free you up to really get moving on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ford. Well, I don't know about everybody else. I'm sure I've got lots of agreements on this, but I feel like this has been an hour well spent. Ford, thank you for pouring into me and my family the way that you have, for loving us the way that you have, for literally being there for me when I was at the end of my rope all those years ago, and saving my life in many ways, saving what could have been a disaster in my marriage. Thank you. And thank you as I look across the folks that are part of this webinar tonight, and I see all these different places and countries and continents represented. It's awesome to me to know that the information that you're sharing, and you've been given to share, and you've been disseminating, and is really making a difference in the world. And I'm excited to see how it's going to continue to do that. But for me personally, for my wife and for my kids, thank you.
Well, Jamie, it's my pleasure, and it is exciting to get these questions, to see the different people. You know, I've always believed if we could make 100 transformational leaders that could make 100 transformational leaders that could make 100 transformational leaders, you know, just in 3 short generations, not 20-year generations, but leadership generations, 1 million, and, you know, only one more generation is 100 million people out there. And so I do believe that. I'm just crazy enough to believe that if we all got committed, that we really could have a movement with a common language and make a difference, not just in our families, not just in our businesses, but in our cities, and who knows, even our nations. So thank you, and the team that works with us, and for all you that were on the webinar tonight, thank you for being with us. It's always humbling and honoring to have people that would spend time, very busy time, valuable time with us. So thank you all for that.
Well, thank you, Ford, and everybody. I wanted to let you know about a promotion that we're doing from tonight's webinar for TL On Demand. TL On Demand is all of the TL trainings, every single one. It's interactive. It's professional quality movie style cut video. Very, very well done. It's a great platform. Ford and the team have spent countless hours and countless dollars getting it developed, and we're thankful for that. But if you guys haven't gotten signed up for TL On Demand yet, please consider doing that. That's not the purpose of this webinar, is to pitch you on TL On Demand, but I had a lot of people wanting to know more about it. So if you're interested in it, go to tlondemand.com and use I put a promo code in the chat bar. I'm also going to be sending an email to you guys of 1027, so October 27th, Web 50. So 1027 Web 50. That'll get you 50% off for life on the subscription to TL On Demand. And by subscribing to that, what you really are doing beyond taking your development to the next level and your ability to continue to be a transformational leader, you're also supporting what Ford and the team is doing here at Transformational Leadership to try to take it across the globe. And so we've got to obviously have finances to do that, and this helps us build that. So please feel free to use that code, get yourself a discount, and share that with other people. That code's going to be live until October 31st. So you've got, 4 days to use that. After that, that code is going away. So you're going to get an email about that. And also, we're going to record this webinar. We have recorded this webinar. We'll be putting it up on YouTube in the next couple of days, and you'll get an email with the link to that YouTube. So thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. Thank you for your time. We do intend to do this on a more frequent basis. I don't know exactly how frequently. It's all based on Ford's schedule, but we will be doing this more often, and we hope you guys can join us and invite others. We have the capacity to bring other people on this as well, so we'd love to see more people be part of this. And everybody have a wonderful night. For our friends in South Africa, I'm so sorry that this is like 3 or 4 in the morning for you. We'll try to schedule a little better for you guys next time. But thank you for being interested and committed enough to be on it at this early hour for you guys. So blessings to all. Have a wonderful evening, and go be transformational leaders.